Looks like it is working properly. My name is Josh Osborne. I'm the product manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation, and welcome to today's CI Tools webinar session. Today's session, we're going to be looking at just a couple of, not random, but a couple of things from different tools that have come through as how-to queries to the support desk and that sort of thing recently. But if you have any questions of your own, please enter those in the chat or questions panel inside this GoToWebinar thing as we go, and I will try to answer those as we go through today or at the end. So just enter those anytime as we go through. But yeah, so that's this session each week. If you haven't attended one of these before, we either go through and we look at one of the CI tools, sometimes from the point of view of someone who hasn't used it before, or sometimes looking at them as sort of a person who already uses it and looking at some more advanced techniques and that sort of thing. And then sometimes we also go through and just answer random how-tos and that sort of thing that we have been getting frequently to our support desk that you might like to see demoed and that sort of thing. So today we're going to look at one or two of those, and then we're also going to look at a couple of the things that were added into the tools and the select library in ArchiCAD 25. So you may have seen those during the ArchiCAD 25 launch, but if not, then you'll be seeing those today. But yeah, we're going to start with one thing that I have had a couple of queries about recently. And as you may remember, if you saw the launch or heard anything about what was happening with the launch of the CI tools in V25, one of the main things that we did with the coverings tool for the ArchiCAD 25 version of coverings is that we made some pretty major adjustments to the way that roof coverings work, and in particular, the edges of roof coverings. So roof edges, the way that it used to work in ArchiCAD 24 and earlier had some issues with the way that it would pick up the edge type and that sort of thing. So we did actually a pretty major overhaul to the way that it detects edge type and the way that it deals with the edge type in 25. And in almost all cases, that will migrate properly from your ArchiCAD 24 project. It should just come through looking exactly like it did in 24, although in some cases it may not. So there are certain types of edge or edge configuration that the covering tool, when migrating from 24 to 25, doesn't do it correctly the first time off, because the tool has to make certain assumptions about how the edge types are going to work. And so if you do encounter, when you're doing a migration from 24 to 25, we have a built-in way to fix those sorts of issues. So what you can do, if in the case of this project, everything has migrated properly, but if you do have one where the edges haven't migrated properly, one of the main ones that you will see that it might not migrate properly is that up on ridges like this, it may not be mitering them, and instead they'll be shooting off perpendicular to the roof planes. Instead, the edges might be. That seems to be the most common migration, that it is not able to get across properly. And so the way that you can fix it, if you're seeing something like that or something similar, it sometimes will do a similar thing in valleys. And if that is what you're seeing, just select the covering that it's happening on, or multiple coverings if there are multiple coverings, and go into the settings for that covering. And what you want to do is in the list of settings pages, you want to go to the configuration, which is the very top level setting here. And if you're using a roof covering that has been migrated from 25, you'll see that it looks like this. If you're using a new to 25 roof covering, it won't look the same as this. You'll see how that will look shortly. But if you are seeing this here, it means it's a migrated roof. And if you have noticed that it's not looking right, the way to fix that now is to reset the migrated edges using this button here. And so what that will do is it will clear out what it has assumed about the roof edges and redo them from scratch based on whatever roof type you set here. So this one was already correct, but what you would do here if you had issues with the one that's come through is go through, choose what type of roof it actually is. So essentially you're telling the tool what to expect, and then press the Reset Migrated Edges button, and that will update then to show you the version 25 configuration settings. So you'll see there's some extra controls there. That's largely due to those new features that we added in 25. And so long as your roof type is set to the type of roof it actually is, it should bring through the things from your 24 roof covering in the way that you would expect them to. So that's just a little thing to watch out for. A lot of you probably have already migrated projects. The other way that, of course, if you're having issues with them is you can always just delete the coverings and recreate them. That will get the job done as well, because they'll be new in 25 then. But if you do have migrated coverings that you're having issues with, just go into the settings here, set the type of roof. In some cases will be set to custom here because it wasn't able to figure it out. So just go through and tell it which type of roof you're using and hit that reset button and then hit OK, and it will fix up those edges. In all of the cases that I've seen where it has gotten something wrong on the migration, this has fixed it for those. So I'm fairly confident it will do it for most cases for you. However, if it still doesn't do it for you, then please do let us know via a support ticket that you have tried resetting edges and it still didn't help. And we can look into making that reset option and just the migration in general a bit more robust to cover whatever it is that didn't work in your case. So that's the CO Tools roof covering settings. Go to configuration and you want to hit that reset edges button there. And if you forget to set the roof type beforehand, you can set it after you've hit the button as well. It's not important that you do that first necessarily. So you can go through and change that after if you need to. So that's migrating roof coverings. So one of the other things that I wanted to look at was we still get questions occasionally about working with coverings and renovations, which some of you may be using renovations. If you are using renovations, then you probably already know that the coverings tool doesn't work the way maybe you expect it to. And the reason for that is that coverings are actually objects. So as you might know, most of the renovations tool is to deal with model elements, I would call them, so walls and windows and roofs and that sort of thing. But your coverings, they are not part of the wall. They're attached to the wall, but they're not necessarily a part of the wall. And so when you're working with the renovations that will apply their changes to your walls, the coverings, the wall coverings is probably where it affects you the most, because you'll be demolishing windows and doors and that sort of thing. You'll find that the coverings tool will just be ignoring newly added as part of a renovation openings, or it will be ignoring openings, it'll still be showing openings that should be gone and that sort of thing. And so what you need to do with the coverings tool, which is a little bit tricky, is essentially you need to attach a covering for each renovation status that you want. So as you know, there's a handful, there's 7 in the New Zealand default template, but you might have more. There's a handful of different renovation, what is it called? Renovation filters available. And what you'll need to do to use the coverings to have them show properly with your renovations is to set up a different covering for every renovation filter. So that means if I was to do them in this project and I were using all of those renovation types, you'll need to set up a different covering for each one. So you'll need to turn on the renovation filter that you want, go in to your wall, apply a covering to it, and then make sure that the covering has the correct renovation status on it, and then go through and turn on the next renovation filter and do that there, and go through all of them in order, attaching a different covering for each one. I know it's really painful, unfortunately. It is the only way that we currently have of making the coverings work with that. We have talked to Graphisoft about the inability of GDL to access the renovation settings, which is what they would need to be able to do to be able to pick this up properly. And we are hopeful that they are working on that and putting it in some future release or update, at which point we will be able to make our tool actually respond to them properly. But for now, because they just can't know by themselves, you have to forcibly tell them by making them just all exist as their own thing per each renovation filter. So yeah, probably if you have encountered this problem, possibly not the news you wanted to hear, although there is a way to do it. It can just be a little bit painful to get that set up in the first place. Once you get it going, you should be fine though. And then the next thing that I wanted to look at was some new stuff in ArchiCAD 25, in particular to do with the detail element tool. So this is something that essentially it's just a handful of new detail elements that were added to the tool, which you may not have noticed have turned up in the library. So I just wanted to go over and highlight some of those so that you know that those are available to you. So in New Zealand, all New Zealand users will have access to the detail elements tool. And in Australia, if you are an annual Select subscriber, you also have access to the detail elements tool. And so yeah, that between 24 and 25, we added in it's about 6 new detail elements types. So I'm just going to go through those so that you can see what options are available. Oh, this is the last one I was going to show, but the CI Tools Rivet was a new one that was added in 25. So that's under the fastenings library there. It works the same way if you've used the detail elements at all. They all work in roughly the same way. So you choose the sort of thing that you want to place a quick detail of, and then it has a little diagram showing you what it will look like, and you can adjust all of the parameters that you might want to. The Rivet works in a similar way. You can choose how you want it to show, whether it's locked or open. So you can make that change there, or you can have it set to manually lock open. And when you do that, that will let you adjust it via a hotspot on the object itself. So if you then select it, you can see you've got a hotspot here that will allow you to open or close it. So you can see the little preview there is showing me what it's going to look like at the various stages that I drag it through there. So you can adjust it that way, or you can adjust it in the settings here. And we think we've covered off all the settings that you might want to change for a Rivet. There's quite a few there. I don't think there's many of our other tools where the parameters for the dimensions of it go all the way up to M. But if there are any missing, let us know. I'm pretty sure that should cover most of them. And while we're here, we also, this isn't a new object, but it's just a little change to one of the objects based on customer requests, and that is that we've added these isometric settings for the engineer's bolt so that you can go through and select those if you need to. Up in the roof section here, we also added a new truss type, the scissor truss. That also was based on requests from customers. And it works the same way as most of the other trusses do. It looks very similar. So you can go through, you can choose what shape and span you need it to have, set the angles that you might need it to have, and how you want the webbing to work. And then choose an eave setting here and what the members will look like there. And that will go through and draw you up a nice scissor truss there. And obviously we also have a kind of a matching 3D truss element for most of these truss types, also in the select library as well. So for select customers, if you have that, there are also select library objects for most of these truss types as well. So that's the scissor truss, which is in the roof section here. Then under walls, there's a new object here. So we already used to have this CI Tools wall frame section element here, which you can see essentially just lets you draw up a section of wall frames and then specify how all of the spacings and sizes should be. And there's just a timber wall framing object, which is a new one here, and it essentially does a similar thing to the section 1, only it's intended to allow you to do some extra stuff that you aren't able to do with that one. And that was under the walls section here. Someone's just saying, is the detail element tool available in any of the overseas client subscriptions? No, it's not currently. It's only available for New Zealand select customers and Australian select customers. We are possibly looking into releasing it internationally, but at this stage we don't have any plans to do that just yet. But we may do in the future, but I can't make any promises on that. What was the next one that I wanted to show? So, so in the general one, we've got a few new ones in here. So there's the 2D custom profile detail element, and that will essentially, if you're using the complex profiles in ArchiCAD, this will let you just place a single 2D view of one of those profiles. So if you open it out here, you'll be able to see the list of all of the projects, all of the profiles you have in the project. So you can go through here and choose whichever one you want, and it will just place a 2D representation of that profile that you selected. So this can be quite handy if you're using those and you want to apply a bunch of them into a detailed drawing. You can just use one of these instead of having to place model elements for all of the bits that you might need. There's also a timber member detail element object here, which does pretty much exactly what you'd expect it to. So it lets you choose how you want the member to work and what shape you need it to be. So you can add an angled or angled top or a chamfer to it. And when you do that, the thing will update here and you can choose your settings. And then we've got the composite lining object. And this one's quite a straightforward one. So you can just choose how many linings you want to do. We've got 1 to 8 here at the moment, which I think should cover most cases. But if not, let us know. And essentially it lets you just choose the number of linings that you want, and then you can go through and change the settings for each lining. And then once you have them placed, you can use the purple hotspots that you see when it's selected to go through and draw that out to whatever shape you might need it to. So they work similar to how the polyline tool does. So you can just grab hold of a node in between nodes, and that will add an extra bend to it, or you can move existing nodes to move the ends of them, as you can see there. So that will let you go through and just build up a series of composite linings to wrap around whatever you might need that to do. Again, obviously you could just draw those using line work if you wanted to. The whole point of the detail elements object for it is to make it so that you don't have to mess around with that. It's just a nice 2D object to let you do that. And then the last of the new ones in here is CI Tools flashing, which works kind of in a similar way to the composite lining actually. So you come in here and you can draw up the shape that you want you can have it draw up the shape that you want using one of these flashing profiles that are built in. We've got a handful of them in there that we thought would be useful, but we are open to making more of these if you have other suggestions for things that might be useful by default. So you can come through here and then just grab the profile type that you want and place it down, and it'll give you that in a shape that works with the default thing that you had set there. But then you can also go through and change the way that you want it to work after that as well. So change the thickness, change the bend radius if you're using one. This one doesn't. And you can also choose to fold the first or last edges of them if you need to. And similar to with the composite lining one, you might have noticed you can also choose to draw on the opposite side of the path as it goes as well. So you come in here and choose edit the flashing profile and make the changes to the profile that way if you want to. And then that lets you make your own to sort of add from. It's kind of similar to the styles in some of the CI tools. So it lets you add your own versions of these. So you could modify that to the shape that you want, and then come back in here and give it a name, and it'll go ahead and we'll have saved that for you. So now you can refer to it later. So that along with the composite lining, 2D custom profile, and the lining and timber member, those are all in the general section here under detail elements. And so those ones were new in ArchiCAD 25, so they won't be there in ArchiCAD 24 in most cases. Some of them are slight changes on 24 ones, so there are similar versions back in there, but that aren't quite the same. But of course, there's still also all of the objects that were there in 24 as well. Yeah. So if you are using the detail elements tool, there's a handful of new things that you can use in there. And if you aren't using the detail elements tool already, then just jump in here and go through and look at what's available. There's quite a few different objects available across each of the categories here. And the idea for them is just to make your life easier by making it so that you don't have to draw it up yourself using a line work or import a DWG or something like that. It's just sort of pre-drawn for you, and they're all parametric in sort of sensible ways for things that you might want to do. So the brick wall section will let you stretch it out to what you need it to do, rather than you having to draw extra bricks to make up the size that you've changed it to and that sort of thing. Most of them will allow you to do that sort of thing. So the floors, for instance, the floor framing, you can stretch that out in size and it will just add more members as it goes, and it will stretch insulation between them if you turn that on and that sort of thing. So they're just to make your life a bit easier. So if you are new to the tool, I would recommend just going through the library of them using the detail elements tool and see what's available, so that you know that next time you are working on doing some detail work, you don't need to do the job of drawing up flashing by hand. You can just place one of these ones here. If you don't have the detail elements showing in ArchiCAD, so if you have detail elements installed but you can't find it in ArchiCAD, it is a separate tool in the toolbox. It should be showing in the document menu here up at the top. But if you're not using the CI Tools work environment, which gets installed when you install the tools, so it looks like this, CI Tools Profile 25. If you're not using that, then the detail elements tool won't automatically appear in your toolbox. So you can add that in easily enough if you do have the tool installed but not showing, just by either loading the CI Tools Profile 25, or if you already have a sort of a customized toolbox of your own, you can add it in just by going to Toolbox here. Choose which menu you want to add it to. So we usually use Document, but you can put it wherever you like. And then scroll down to near the bottom. The bottom section of these available tools will always be the MEP things. So you want to scroll up just above the MEP things, and you'll see the add-on extra tools here. So you'll see there are some other tools that you might want to add in here as well if you use those from the CI Tools. The CI Tools Extrusion is here. The CI Tools Slab Edge will also be here. Those two will be there if you use the Objective tool. The covering tools will all show in there, but there's no reason to actually add those using the toolbox, because you will always place those using the menu command anyway. Placing them by themselves won't get you anywhere, so I do not recommend adding those to the toolbox. And then the detail element you can see there, so you just select that and then hit the Add Selected button, and it'll go across to here. And then you can drag it around by clicking on the little arrowheads over there. And we also have a couple of other tools here as well. So you can see cabinets, electrical, and our stair tool all have their own tools there as well. So if you're using those, you can add those in using the same interface. All right, so were there any other questions about that, or did you have anything else you would like to see me cover, or do you have anything else that you would like to see me go over like in depth in a session next week or something like that, just let me know. And if you do think of anything else, of course, you can always send it through to the support desk. That's how I find out what people are asking about. So just send through a support ticket saying, hey, in the next webinar, could you show us how to X? And I will try to cover those in a future version of this webinar. But thanks for joining, everyone. It looks like we don't have any more questions. If you're having trouble getting any of those tools set up, you can always contact the support desk as well. They'll be able to help you either install them or add them to your toolbox or just figure out how to get into them and that sort of thing. I will be uploading the recording for this probably next week sometime. So if you want to refer back, you can head over to MyCI and look for the videos section there. And that's where you'll find the old versions of this. Or you can just look on the Central Innovation YouTube channel. They'll be available there as well. But thanks for your time, and I will see you again same time next week.